What are your hopes for the future in relation to how the medical community approaches and responds to the occurrence of CDT among pediatric populations?
I have big dreams. I think it starts with an openness to learn and an awareness, right? So in the medical community, we're constantly getting a barrage of information, of new studies. We like to take our time. We like to have all of our data in a row and do our research. And I think that is a huge, great thing as part of our community. But I think it begins with an openness and awareness that we can do better, and saying, I've kind of always had this feeling that these kids were not being well served, and I want to know more. So it starts there. My greatest dream was that we would all eventually get to the point where we're like Dr. Burke Harris's practice, where an A score is just like a vital sign, where we bring our kids in and we say, what impact has trauma had on this child, and we can utilize that A score, looking at how many different adverse childhood experiences had this child had, and most of the data shows that if a child has had 3 or more adverse childhood experiences, that they're at high risk. And so in her book, The Deepest Well, she talks about how some of these kids that had severe asthma, that were on tons of medications for their asthma, that were chronically ill and staying home from school, when they started addressing their trauma in a holistic manner, giving the family resources, sending them to a social worker or a counselor, and giving them those kind of ancillary tools, that lo and behold, their asthma got much better controlled. So again, does it take it
Mm,
away? Not necessarily, but we will see great health outcomes, improvement in these chronic illnesses in children, and especially on into adulthood, if we really begin to take a more holistic approach to this. And so my goal
right.
is that someday that we could all be educated in this area, that we could realize that it is the root of a bunch of problems that we've kind of labeled, this is just asthma, this is high blood pressure. But when you start to see very large numbers of asthma and high blood pressure and obesity in children that are very young, we have to start going, something's not right here, especially when you look at those being much greater in a community of poverty or a community of high stress, high traumatic stress. You have to start going, something's different here. Why are these kids experiencing this gamut of disease to this degree when all these other children are not? And so I think it
Yeah.
starts with asking those questions and being willing to be open to making little changes in your practice and being an advocate in and among the medical community colleagues.